Good morning, everyone. My name is Katie Gideon, and I am dialing in from Tulsa, Oklahoma, back in the States for the next 3 weeks. I'm seeing a lot of foggy. We've got some fog here in Oklahoma, so it hasn't been that great, but I am so excited to see all of you. I haven't done a social this early in the morning in a while, so I was having to find my voice, but I am super excited to do our January monthly setup. So closing out 2024, closing out December 2024, opening up January as well as January 2025. So it is really exciting. So because I'm the on-camera facilitator, I will be the only one on camera. I will be the only one chatting, talking. We'll do the slides and the music, and then in the chat you will see my co-facilitator Bailey, who is dialing in from Tennessee. So if you have any questions or concerns, you can see her in the chat, and we will try to do our best to answer them. Welcome to all of our returning socialers. I love seeing all of our returning names. You guys put a smile on my face, especially as we come together to be the best accountability buddies that we can as we get through our monthly setup. Just make sure to double check that if you want to share in the larger Sonder chat, make sure that that chat is set to everyone. Hosts and panelists just comes to myself and Bailey, which again is great. We can answer all those questions or concerns, but if you're wanting any other kind of larger connection or communication, make sure it is set to everyone. I would also like to see in the chat, you can either raise your hand or put in the chat if this is your first social, or maybe your first monthly setup social, or even your first setup in a while. I see that Jennifer hadn't been here in a while. Welcome back. We are always here, and we are always happy when you are coming. I feel like Maya, one of our facilitators, describes it best as these socials. Consider them like a river. It's always flowing. It's always going to be there. You can either come, hang out with us, bring the inner tubes, do the floating, or you can just kind of dip a toe as you need and come back. But it will always be here, and we are always here to support. So love seeing all of our newer folks. Welcome. There is a certain kind of cadence that you'll start to learn at the socials because it can be a little bit of a sensory overload. The chat can go pretty fast depending on how many people we have in there. You're going to maybe want to get some inspiration from the chat as well as the examples on the slide. But if it's too much, you can turn off the chat. If I am too much, you can mute me. If the music is too much, you can mute it. But I would always recommend, especially if you're working on a computer, have that snippet or kind of the caption option available to keep some of those examples, or have your phone handy if you want to get some more inspiration. But we are so excited to dive into this setup, but we do have some ground rules. Be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotions or spam. Respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. Limit repetitive product and accessory questions, but we do always like to talk about those. I'm a big sticker fan, so we'll talk about stickers. So we just ask that it doesn't become too much of a distraction. And then while Bailey and I have some information, we do not have everything, so we will most likely redirect some of those customer care inquiries, especially if they are specific to your account, to our team, hello@silkandsonder.com. And as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you are responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. So while we do love celebrating all of the wins that some people have, we fully understand that some people are not maybe having a great start to potentially January, a great start around the holidays. So we always want to hold support for all of those that maybe aren't quite on the kind of celebration side of things, but we have all those above. So if you need to set some of those mental or emotional barriers or boundaries, no one is grading you, no one is looking over your shoulder to see how much you've done. So you should absolutely take away what you need from this social, but do not do so to the point of triggering. We want to dive in and push ourselves, but we don't want to do it to the detriment. So we're diving into the first theme of 2025, which is prosperity. And to be fair, I had a little tough time with prosperity, mainly because I didn't really actually know what the actual definition was. I feel like prosperity was one of those words that I knew more from context clues. So I kind of had to do a little bit of extra research on it. And so the definition that I found is the condition of being successful or thriving, which I do think is great. But when you start looking, I'm a big quotes person or an affirmation person. I felt it got really negative really quickly or really like aggressive. And so that's not really the prosperity vibe I want to carry into 2025. So I liked the idea that prosperity is a way of living and thinking, obviously not just about money and things. And then I started to look at some of the synonyms for prosperity. And the one I kind of landed on was wholeness. So I like the idea that wholeness does not mean perfection, it means embracing brokenness as an integral part of life. So the idea that this wholeness concept with prosperity and a way of living and thinking to me kind of, I guess I was able to understand it a little bit better, and it became a little bit clearer to me of kind of the direction I wanted to go with this. Because I know you'll hear us talk kind of in the socials as well as in the chat, especially around the beginning of the year, that a lot of us do pick words of the year. I haven't quite settled on my word of the year yet, but I think it's going to be something kind of a back to basics or a back to fundamentals. I've had quite a bit of change the last couple of years, and so I think I need to come back and revert to some of those skill sets that I have that I need to now overlay with still some of the newness or figuring out the newness. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'll let everybody know what I decide on. But to me, that wholeness concept really fed a little bit more with that back to basics or the fundamentals that I was trying to kind of look at. And Bailey and I were chatting before this during the kind of dress rehearsal a little bit. And she was even kind of trying to find other definitions because we always like to come up with, you got to find a way to build your own connection to the theme, and sometimes it can be a little bit trickier. So that's why prosperity, I am embracing this idea of wholeness, and see if that kind of helps kind of build that theme a little bit more strongly for me and in kind of my self-care journey. But I love seeing the conversations around all of this as well. So please throw in your thoughts on kind of prosperity, or if you've had to expand to a slightly different word, or if it's a good relationship to some of the words that you already have. And so I also get inspiration from Meha's letter. So if you haven't read it, I recommend it. And some of the things that I liked for sure with this will pull out is obviously with January and a new year, it's the fresh starts, the reflections, and dreaming what's to come. And so the idea that you can kind of start there, and then obviously the idea that prosperity is much more expansive, not just material wealth, which again, I feel like feeds into that wholeness idea of what I have, wholeness in self-care, wholeness in, self-journey, the wellness, all of those type of things, the self-care practices that Bailey kind of pulled in from that definition, and then redefining prosperity. So that's kind of what I feel like I've done, is that, if it feels one thing, but I'm wanting to use a synonym and do an expansing. So we certainly always like that. And so today we're going to go through the monthly acrostic poem, and don't worry, we have a couple different versions of that if the acrostic poem isn't quite for you. Then we'll do a quick little year reflection, which is always special to January, and then December reflections, and then we'll set our January intentions and then cover those mood and habit trackers. And so the way we're going to work this is you can kind of connect all of these pages together, or you can keep them completely separate. Sometimes the best way to kind of approach these pages is to zoom out just a little bit and ask yourself, what do you need or what do you want? Kind of those two ideas, which I know they can sometimes be conflicting, but it's always a good way to kind of step up back out a little bit to then move forward. So for that prosperity acrostic poem, you can turn to a blank page or a sticky note thoughts journal. I know a lot of people were using the notes section on page 1, or doing kind of the full one there. And so what are some things to come to mind when you think of the word prosperity? This is one of those don't second guess yourself, just write them down. Try to come up with at least 10 words or phrases that describe what prosperity means to you. I like this as a quintessential kind of brain dump, and I saw some discussion in the Silk and Sonder app yesterday about what is a brain dump. Is it, removing the negativity, which I do think is a really great idea. The way I'm using it in this context is to just kind of don't filter yourself, don't edit yourself, just what are the first things that come to mind when you think prosperity or wholeness, or even just kind of the newness and the excitement of a new month, new year. And so you'll use the first letter of each line, or you can use a couple different ones. You can do sentences, you can do one words, you can do sets of words, all of these things. So this is what the section is going to look like using all those first letters. And I've got a couple great examples from the app. These are the two that were done on that first page with the notes section there. And as you can see, they went with some statements, some words, just kind of those type of things to embrace. And then here are ones that are on the full notes page with, again, a little, you guys are always really creative with this and the inspiration there and just the intentionality of trying to build that relationship with the theme is always great. And then with the one on the right, I like that, they wanted particular words to fit the way. So I love the fact that for the P in prosperity, it's actually open. And same thing with trusting. So it becomes the slight modifications, breaking away a little bit from those, directions or even instructions to make it kind of fit what really works for you. And then if the acrostic poem is really not where you are, maybe that's not the inspiration you want to do this morning on a Sunday. Maybe you can write a letter to either goodbye 2024, a hello 2025, or maybe it's a goodbye to December, kind of thanking it. Or maybe if December was a little rough, maybe it's a don't let the door hit you on the way out type feeling. And then maybe a welcome letter to January. So I am going to stop talking. I'm going to turn on some music, but I would love to hear how you approach these. If you have any thoughts, love to continue the conversation in the chat, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. While acrostic poetry is not really my forte, I do love the idea of it. Another way to kind of express yourself. So there becomes that really nice creativity there, kind of another approach to find slightly different meaning. So I always, again, recommend attempting it. And if, again, not your thing, we did find some other ways. The letter is a great way. I've also seen people use just kind of either the maybe their word of the year or word of the month. I know someone did a really lovely one on glimmers. So you can always find the inspiration there. But to me, sitting here reading the chat, I love that you can kind of get a little bit of an insight into everyone's either personal journey or kind of their thoughts and feelings around this, which I feel like just makes the whole kind of process a little bit more special and a little bit more unique, because each and every one of you have a different thought and process and uniqueness. And so that's what's really valuable about these. And again, thank you so much for sharing. So we are now going to do the yearly reflection, which this only comes around obviously at the beginning of January for the beginning of the new year. And so this is an opportunity to think back to where you were at the beginning of last year. And you can ask yourself, what were you hoping to accomplish? How did you grow? You can kind of list some of those experience, achievements, memories from the past year. I found these two quotes really helpful kind of with my yearly reflection, the idea that there are years that ask questions and years that answer. So I feel like for me, I had a lot of questions in kind of 2023, 2024. So maybe having some more answers, which again comes back to that back to fundamentals for me for 2025. And then as always, just the reminder, try not to compare your year to anyone else's. If all you did this year was survive, you did more than enough, and try to remember that end of year highlights are just snippets. They'll never tell you the full story of someone's year. So just again, keep that a little bit in perspective, because again, we're trying not to be like negatively triggering. We want to kind of provide inspiration as well as a really opportunity to kind of sit back and either have the kind of almost like a rosebud thorn concept with the reflection, and so other ways you can do this is you can repurpose this as maybe a 2025 wish list. So things you want to achieve, people you want to meet, kind of books you want to read, places you went or places you want to go. You do not fill this out completely. Maybe this is just maybe one thing that you want to look at or deep dive a little bit into a specific highlight. And again, these can be anything. And you can also change up the categories if you need to, or if they don't really apply. And at the end of the day, these can be stickers, affirmation quotes, anything that kind of suits your fancy there. So for example, the people I meet or the people I met, that doesn't really quite speak to me as well. So I changed that to relationships I strengthened. So I focused a little bit more on either the specific people I already knew, maybe the people that I found in 2024, but kind of more from that perspective. Someone else repurposed it to things they learned. Same thing with books I read. I'm a bookworm, so I'm always reading something. And so I changed it more to experiences that impacted me. And so those were kind of the small changes that I made. So I would love to hear if you're repurposing some of these categories, or I would love to be here to celebrate the things you achieved, who you met, the places you went, the books you read. So please feel free to share in the chat. Just double check it to everyone if you want to see that. I'm going to play just a quick song as we kind of get to sit back and look at 2024 from this kind of specific lens. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. What I do think is really kind of special about the socials is some of these prompts and some of those things are just maybe not ones that you were really going to kind of tackle right away. These just kind of provide a little bit of inspiration, not only from the folks that are in the chat, but just different approaches to these type of things. So it almost gives you a little bit added push or a little bit more permission to kind of fill these out as you go. But obviously, with the socials, not enough time to cover all of these. So I do think this is one of those really special pages to kind of tag and flag because you can always come back to it, especially as you kind of use January as a way to not only reflect on, future. I think Deb said it best. She was going to use it partly to reflect on 2024 and then turn it into some inspiration for 2025. So would not expect this to be done in the very short amount of time we had today, but just a little bit of that push or that affirmation and reaffirmation to kind of help with kind of the instructions around some of these different prompts, just so you kind of have a good solid idea of maybe what direction you want to go. So when the idea of continuing with reflection, we're now going to move into those monthly setup pages. And so we're going to start with our December reflections. So you're going to hear me use the phrase kind of zoom in and zoom out. I work with a lot of maps and charts in my day to day. So I do a lot of zooming in and zooming out, but it always changes the perspective just a little bit. More information, more not. So while the yearly reflection gives you that larger picture, now we're going to zoom back down a little bit into looking at December. And we're just going to highlight some of those wins, the challenges, favorite moments. But then what I like about this exercise are what are the things that I maybe want to start, stop, and continue as I then use the next page, which is going to be the January intentions. So being able to kind of work through these different pieces, again, you can connect them together, or you can just keep it as a what you need on this page is what you need on this page, and it will stay on this page. And Bailey did remind us, yes, this is page 8 in your January journal. And so wins are something that you did well, something that made you smile, something that made you happy. Maybe it was just an accomplishment, a goal achieved, or maybe it was just kind of a different perspective. Maybe it was a mental change, an emotional change, something a little less, or a little more crunchy, a little bit more squishy, a little less defined. And again, same thing with the challenges. Something that didn't go right, something maybe out of control, a stumbling block, a frustration, maybe it is a mindset. It can be kind of those things. You can always, you can treat this as again as a monthly rosebud thorn. You can always use your phone or calendar or photos because remember some of our favorite memories and highlights we do capture in photo form. So this is, not to use the word test, but I'm going to use it. This is an open book test. So you can phone your friends, you can use all the resources, do everything you want so that you have something there. And then what I like is then maybe looking at the things you want to start, stop, and continue. So these can be drawn from maybe you achieved a win or you achieved a change in mindset. So those are things you want to continue doing. Maybe for the challenge, it was something that maybe you want to stop doing, or maybe another thing that you want to start doing so that you can kind of brace for impact for future challenges. And then always the favorite moments are just really fun to kind of look at. And so here again, some examples. What I like about the one on the left is that not only did they do the start, stop, and continue, but they asked why they wanted to start, stop, and continue. And then they kind of asked how they want to do those things, because those things can be directly taken into the why. You can start building habits around the whys, and you can also build the habits and intentions around the how. So the idea to start, stop, and continue is kind of that added motivation, but those next kind of actionable steps. And then as always, these are just kind of really great ways to celebrate. You can use all the lines, you can use one of the lines. They can be just kind of big ideas of what you want to do, or they can be very specific, almost like, again, the to-do list type thing. Again, maybe it's also just kind of focusing in on a specific kind of component. Maybe you want your routines. That's kind of what you want to start, stop, and continue and focus on. Maybe you want to kind of embrace a little bit of the seasonality. We were definitely going to be in the winter. In college, we always called January to spring break, kind of back from the Christmas and New Year holidays to spring break. Those were the dark ages. And so sometimes you had to kind of work a little harder to get through the dark ages. But I think it's always a really fun way to do it. And then again, focusing in on some of those bigger ideas. Maybe it's as simple and small steps forward. Maybe it's procrastination less. Stop doing that and delaying things. And maybe it's the honest expectations and realistic changes that you want to continue to set for yourself. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I loved seeing just the opportunity that kind of this amount of time gives us to just look back and kind of use that valuable element of reflection to then add a little bit more perspective. Because again, sometimes we always remember the negative, or at least I always remember the negative, and you realize that you definitely had some good things kind of there and you're able to kind of meld those together. But also at the same thing, I'm always one of those, let's turn the negative into a positive in the future. And that's kind of again some of those actionable items with the start, stop, and continue. So, moving forward, we now are going to do our January intentions, which is on page 9 in your January journal. And so, this is a way to kind of add a little bit more perspective for how you want to kind of approach January, maybe what you want to accomplish in January, or maybe some of the things that you can then carry over into those weekly setups and the weekly pages of how you can kind of work on either mid range or kind of long range goals, especially when we're talking spiritual health, personal life, physical health, key relationships, money management, and professional goals. So you can always use the theme of prosperity to set your intentions. You can also use your word of the year to kind of set your intentions. And so these can obviously be, maybe you want to focus on one specific area using kind of all of these different categories for a self-love or a self-talk or a self-care. I am a big fan of songs and lyrics, so those are always a great way to kind of add inspiration there. As I said, I keep my playlist on shuffle, so I'll kind of pull like whatever artist of the month I've kind of been listening to, and so when those songs come back on the random playlist, I will then go back and check on my intentions. But it's also kind of maybe you want to how you want to feel the month. Maybe you want to focus on, and again, we're a big fan of stickers, images, colors, all of those things. And again, maybe it's one thing that you want to let go of, or one thing you want to start doing, kind of dealing with that duality. And so another kind of opportunity to reframe again, if prosperity isn't quite the direction you're wanting to go, there are other kind of themes for the month that you can embrace. So the mental wellness month, January is mental wellness month, as is self-love month. So maybe it's a little bit of a sign to focus on those two kind of concepts with your intentions. And at the same time, we love to repurpose things. I know I do. And so if spiritual health isn't really something that speaks to you, maybe it's a mental health, maybe it's connection. Instead of personal life, it's maybe your creative life, a home life, personal fun. Instead of physical health, maybe it's mental, heart, brain, or any other kind of specific health you want to focus on. Maybe instead of key relationships, you want to define the relationships. So maybe it is a family relationship, maybe it's those work relationships, marriage relationships, specific friend relationships. Same thing with maybe money management isn't quite what you're wanting to do. So maybe it becomes a time management, home management. And then we know that people are at different milestones in their life. So maybe professional goal is not what you want to focus on. I did see that someone said they spent a lot of their focus on their career in 2024. So maybe embracing a little less on the professional goal side and exploring some of those learning, creative, vacation goals, planning goals, any of these things. I saw all of our readers chatting there. So maybe it's book goals. But the idea to kind of be able to repurpose these for what you need. So it goes back to asking yourself, what do you need this month, or what do you want from this month? This is a great way to do that. And so, again, I am a big fan of the duality concept. So here are things you're going to do, things you're going to let go. Maybe you want to focus on here are things that you want to have more of, and then maybe less of, or do more of, or do less of, as you kind of ask yourself those things within the intentions. And as always, this was a huge one. We did movement and momentum probably a couple months ago. So the idea that there's always an action, but you always still need to rest and refresh after that. So maybe it is a movement, what you want to do, that the direction you want to go, but then again, countering that with how you're going to rest, refresh, or reset. I love the one on the left. They went definitely the picture route, and I love the elegance and simplicity sometimes. That's why I kind of want to go back to basics and fundamentals. But you can incorporate all of those stickers there. And then while we are breaking up with perfection, I do, if you're not ready to kind of commit to some of those intentions, the post-it note route is a really great way to go, because you can kind of carry some of those over maybe from month to month, or maybe you want to focus on one for the part of the month. Maybe it's a little bit on the recovery from holiday, and then halfway through January is where you start to build some of that momentum to really start kind of tackling some of those goals. And then again, the idea of embracing something and releasing it, that kind of fun duality. And then breaking down, here's what they feel they needed for their intentions. So this is how they're going to work on it. And those are the direct reflections to the habits that you can then carry over to the habit trackers. So again, you can always kind of leave yourself breadcrumbs or set yourself up a little bit more for success in these by kind of using these pages to kind of work together to help you and provide those extra reminders. Again, you can go the quotes route. I like to do, again, the avoid, but again, being able to change some of those into, spiritual health and minimalism, house and money management. And then sometimes, maybe you had a really busy December and you're not quite recovered yet. So just all the stickers or even just all the different ideas of, again, sometimes embracing that simplicity or back to those basics, back to the fundamentals to work on. And then the idea of, so the one on the left I thought was really good. And that was because I don't know if bloom was their word of the year. I don't know if bloom is just what they're embracing for the month, but that is another kind of focus point there. You can kind of zoom in a little bit more. So maybe you want to take whatever word of the year you have and use that, carry through all of your intentions, and some of the kind of rephrasing there. So their idea is they're going to embrace bloom for January. And so all of their intentions reflect that. And then just because there are 6 squares does not mean you need to use all 6. And just because they say one, maybe you just want to focus on the mental health, physical health, personal life, and key relationships, and that's it. So you can always do that. Again, it goes back to what do you need, what do you want? And I think it's a really good way to kind of rediscover your journal, kind of shake it up if you've been on this kind of Silk and Sonder journey with us for a while. And then again, I'm a big on iconography. I love the idea of being able to visually represent what you want to do. So that's the one on the left. I thought they were really clever, really creative. And then I love the one on the right. And that was where, again, it's more of the manifestation or the predictions. They've looked into their crystal ball and this is how they see their month going, or this is what they want to see their month going. So it's an opportunity to take a little bit of that ownership of this is what I see, this is what my goal is going to be, and then we can kind of help build around it. So I will give you guys some time to work on this and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Saw the question in the chat, Christina. Do people keep the same intentions from the previous month? I absolutely have carried over intentions, and I know a lot of people who are working on very specific goals or specific routines will carry over those intentions as well. So just because, again, love the idea of a new month, like being able to shake it up, do something different each time, but the ability to kind of really narrow down on some of those specific things. So if it's something that really resonates with you, something that you definitely want to continue, something that's really inspired you to start something, or kind of added that extra oomph to maybe stop something, I think that's the best way to carry them over. And I know you can do it kind of on a quarterly basis, maybe it's a semi basis, being able to break kind of all those things down. I think it's more of just what gets you excited to kind of embrace some of these things and start to see some of those positive changes that you see and want to see with that self-care journey. And so now we're going to move into the mood and habit trackers. So, like I said, you can kind of knit together the intentions and the habits and the moods and kind of ways to do that there, or you can keep them all separate. So, not only are we going to kind of cover some examples of kind of the traditional, maybe the classic way of doing these, we're also going to bring in some of those repurposing ideas because, like I said, there are times I love to repurpose, and then there are times where I need to go back to the basics. So, we like to incorporate both. So the mood tracker, I also liked this idea because sometimes we always talk about what emotions do you want to do one or do you want to do multiple, but the idea of not letting one setback color your day. So just because you have like one really strong emotion, just pause, feel it, and then keep going. So I think that's a really lovely perspective when it comes to the mood tracker, because I've definitely fell into the trap of really embracing the strongest mood I had for that day. And if it was negative, then I was just kind of stewing in this negative mood the whole day when being able to track it and kind of realizing that I think is really helpful. And again, you can always choose 2 to 3 negative feelings, one neutral, or 2 to 3 positive feelings. I found that I was using too much of the extreme feelings. So I made some adjustments so that I stayed a little bit more even keel because while I like a good roller coaster, those are really fun, but I don't like mood roller coasters during the day. And so you can always focus on the theme of prosperity. You can fill in every emotion that came up for that day or whichever one is strongest. But as I said, don't let it color your whole day. And you can get as creative as you want with these. Don't worry, I will come back to all of these slides, but here is our feelings wheel that can give you some inspiration for those things there. I also come from, again, scientific background. This was shared, so I love a good graph. And it breaks it down into the negative and positive feelings and maybe the high energy versus low energy concepts for some of those positive and negative feelings. So again, just another perspective on how you can think of moods and maybe how you want to kind of track moods and kind of see how they impact. And what I also love is the ways to repurpose because this tracker is really unique in that you can track multiple things. So maybe it's a reflection of the emotion and maybe an energy level. I know Bailey has used it for kind of anxiety levels and those type of things. So I think it's really great. Maybe you want to do energy levels. Maybe you want to scale certain things. And no, we don't define the scale here. It's just whatever scale works for you. So here are some of those repurpose examples as well. So the one at the top, you've got your panic attacks. So whether it was heavy, whether it was none, maybe solutions to do that there. The emotions attached to energy, feeling multiple emotions per day. Um, I'm sad to see the Christmas lights go just because of that time of the year, but it looks so pretty. And so they're able to track kind of each feeling was a specific colored light. So you got to see kind of the full, and at the end of the day, whether the emotion was negative or indifferent or positive, it still makes a really, really pretty visual. So feeling all of the emotions and breaking them and experiencing them still adds to the like kind of really lovely color of the day. Maybe it's a physical care tracker, maybe you're tracking some of your other activities. And I think this is another one of those you can turn it into maybe you're not really wanting to track moods or emotion. Maybe this is where you track your intentions. So each of those categories that we just did, maybe they get a tracker here. Maybe you're on a specific food journey. Maybe it's those anxiety, the kind of tracking there. As I just mentioned, the intentions tracker is there. So they pulled the 6 different titles for the intentions that we just did so that they can focus on an intention each day or maybe multiple intentions each day. So that's kind of a tool to keep you engaged with your journal if that's kind of what you're wanting this month. Again, maybe it's an energy tracker, book tracker. Um, I know we've got a couple of our kind of self-employed kind of business types. Leanne is one of those folks, and so she has her business habits. So she kind of uses those in the mood tracker again. I know with the habit title, but again, focusing on a specific concept of what you want to do. So instead of a mood tracker, she's focusing on that kind of business expansion. The mood tracker on the left kind of reminds me a little bit of Inside Out, where you have the emotion bubbles. How big was the bubble? How little was the bubble? Was maybe how strong it was. And then the idea of checking in the midday, the night, and in the morning. And then all of those kind of ideas there, and then a stress tracker. And if you have the different stress things, there are ideas to de-escalate. So if you're experiencing stress 1 through 3, you can do these type of things to de-escalate. If it's 4 through 6, de-escalate using that. So you can always kind of build in all of these multiple tools, and maybe it's a mood and creativity tracker. Again, that's self-care, spending tracker. Maybe you had a tough day, maybe you had a great day, maybe you just want to see what kind of day you had, and those type of definitions there. So we obviously have plenty of options to repurpose. Maybe you just need some mood boosts. Maybe it's that replenishment. Here are the things you need to do to replenish yourself in those categories. So I'm going to give you guys some time to work on these mood trackers. So I'd love to hear if you do track your moods, or do you overlay some of those other things with the relationship. Maybe it's work week moods versus weekend moods, kind of all those things, or maybe it's something completely different that you're repurposing it for. And we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I think what I really just like about these trackers is even though it is just titled a mood tracker, you can come back to what do you need this month or what do you want this month. And you can get really creative with these. And I certainly like the fact that you can kind of track or incorporate multiple elements to see kind of that causation, kind of a little bit of a cause effect, or even like relationships if those things are there. So maybe anxiety, your anxiety levels could be driven a little bit by energy levels. Maybe it's the energy levels that are driving some of the emotions. And then even kind of a little bit more intricate with overlaying kind of what day of the week it is, those type of things. Is it a special? Is it a vacation? Is it a holiday? All those things. So that's where I think these trackers can get really detailed or really intricate, but I think it's really fascinating, kind of some of the stuff you can learn from it. And I feel like that's part of the fun. So there are definitely times where I will not maybe use the mood tracker for the month, but then there are other ones that I get really excited about kind of tracking and learning something new or different. So now we're going to finish up with that last tracker, which is the habit tracker. Again, being able to do it exactly as is for that habit tracker. And so the way I've kind of framed the monthly habit tracker, at least for me, is that these are things you want to do every single day. And then I will pull specific habits into my weekly where I add the lens of reality. So that's more of just where I manage my expectations. I am a creature of habit, so the same three are always there: move, read, and journal. How much time I can spend each day will be determined by weather. It'll be determined by, workload, school load, kind of all of those things. But there are things that I absolutely want to do every single day. And so you can always use prosperity as the focus. You can pick a specific theme. And again, you can pull all of those habits from previous months. Like I said, I've got three staples that have been here. When I first started my Silk and Sonder journey, I was here for the trackers because it was kind of during COVID, but I stayed for all the creativity and the other things that we could kind of learn from it. And then at the same times, you can always find a balance. Maybe you want to try something new. Maybe you want to shake it up a little bit, or maybe you want to commit to kind of others that you want to do. Maybe you even want to kind of zoom back in on a very specific routine or a specific part. So here are some always fun kind of habits trackers to kind of include. These are specific ideas if you want one. But again, I'm a big visual person, so this person used the kind of color wheel of the rainbow, but then also mentioned that, they ended up with COVID, and that's where you take the break. That sometimes life happens, and so the habits kind of go a little bit out the window because it just looks a little bit different if you're recovering or even if you're on vacation or the holidays. Maybe that's the break you need to refresh, or maybe it's the routine that you need to get through it. And then same thing with being able to incorporate all of your habits that you're wanting to do. And then again, writing down the days of the week and then kind of scaling it. Maybe it's more of a scale, how many times did you do it? Or what was your kind of satisfaction for that? Those are different ways that you can do it by adding that kind of 1 through 5 or adding a number to it. The idea that you can break it into a couple different things. Maybe you have a morning routine and an afternoon or evening routine. That's how you break it up for those habits there. Being able to change it up for your work week habits may look a little bit different than your weekend habits, making them a little bit more on the, again, squishy idea of, so maybe these are the kind of larger ideas, and then you're going to define them specifically in the weekly setup pages. One last of the Christmas lights, which I know that someone mentioned year round, they can then be fairy lights. But again, I just think it's a really lovely visual. So you can make these kind of very visually appealing if that's kind of the inspiration or the motivation you need to do that. I know the one on the right is one of Bailey's, where she had her habits, but then she broke down what type of specific action we'll incorporate into each of those habits, just as the helpful reminder there. Because again, we want to set ourselves up for success. So if you already know that this is how you're going to do physical care, you can write those categories there. So, if you're having a little bit of a rough day, instead of having to kind of come up with something new, you can just pull from the list, which I always think is one of those you're going to be successful if you make it successful. Maybe you want to do a celebration tracker. Maybe again, it's the kind of idea of doing all of these things. Maybe it's kind of checking in with the affirmation, the one thing, setting aside time to do the daily rituals. These habits can be the relationship with your journal, those type of things. The other idea, again, the one on the left is really heavy into the journal. So they're wanting to do the daily affirmations, the daily goals, daily ritual, daily reflection. They want to check in with their gratitude log. They want to check in with their mood tracker, as well as then work on their weekly habits and goals. So it is a way to kind of give yourself a little bit of a cheat sheet to help you through. And then the one on the left I used because I was struggling with finding a routine when I started an online MBA. So I broke it down with the tutorials I needed to attend, the modules I needed to accomplish, even something as simple as I actually needed to get in a better habit of checking my new school email. You know, when you've got like 8 email addresses, it can be a little tricky to kind of reprioritize that. So if you have a very specific thing that you need to focus on, for me it was that MBA coursework for that semester, so I repurposed my habit tracker for that purpose. Because like I said, I had already built in my move, my reading, and my journals, incorporated that on the weekly, so I gave it a break so I could focus specifically on this, because I was really struggling with how to incorporate that new habit into my current habits. And then I'm always a big fan of these. Just maybe some gentle reminders. Maybe you can incorporate some of the winter hygge essentials into some of your habits, or how to cope with kind of post celebration blues reminders. So I'm going to give you time to finish up all of these pages, and we'll see you soon for the close. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And even though we do get the added 15 minutes with the monthly setups, we have reached the end, and I feel like it always goes by so fast. So, thank you, everyone, for all of your just thoughtful and engaging chat, inspiration, all of those things there. And as well as we would love to see your pages in the Silk and Sonder app if you wish to share them. That's always a great platform for a little bit more inspiration and all the fun things. And especially loved seeing that people are embracing the Hygge bingo. So would certainly love to see those there. And then, as always, an opportunity to do that 24/7 personalized life coach. Definitely reach out to the Silk and Sonder team at Concierge. And that Bailey's just put in there now, that concierge at silkandsonder.com for any questions. And that also relates just to how it works, even some of the financial concerns around it. Definitely reach out to them because we are still in kind of a beta testing mode. So if you have any kind of any ideas or thoughts or reservations, definitely reach out. If you hadn't already seen the town hall that Mayha hosted with Bailey, also a good start there. But do not go unanswered. It was a phrase that I said, don't have a bad time because you didn't tell someone you had a bad time. So don't, rest. Don't wait on this idea if it's really something you're genuinely interested in, and you can get all that information there. This is a copy of my playlist. I will include the Spotify link in the chat. But thank you, everybody, for joining us on this. Like I said, it was a foggy Sunday, but this early on a Sunday, to definitely set up for January, for a new month, new year, all of the excitement there. So I hope all of you have an amazing and embracing prosperity in January. Have a great rest of your weekend. You guys are going to have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Bye.